Let the record show that all commissioners are present today. I'll move on to approval agenda. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
All right, we had a motion by Commissioner Pizer and a second by Simmons to approve the agenda. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wanting to address the commission only on matters not listed on this agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes unless additional time is needed for translation. Please state your name and address for the record before making your presentation. Anybody in the public that would like to come up? Online, Mila? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of June 10th, 2025.
My motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Simmons and a second by Commissioner Sanchez to approve the minutes. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. All right, we'll move on to public hearing. Should anyone challenge any proposed action which is the subject of a public hearing listed on this agenda, that person challenging any action taken after the public hearing may be limited to raising only those issues addressed at the public hearing in this notice or in written correspondence delivered to the Planning Commission at or prior to this public hearing. All right, we'll move on to our first item.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. This presentation is regarding conditional use permit 25-152 to install a 998 kilowatt solar facility. This one keeps going off, but it's fine. That one is on, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The project is located south of East Riverside Street, west of East Los Angeles Street, and the project will occupy 2.5 acres of the overall 517 acre site. The site is zoned for agriculture use per the zoning ordinance. Any solar energy electrical generators, commercial or domestic, exceeding 5 kilowatts requires a conditional use permit within agriculture zone. Since the proposed project is 995 kilowatts, a conditional use permit is required. Staff finds that the project is consistent with the city's general plan policies and standards. Additionally, the project will not change the integrity and character of the zoning ordinance. And the applicant will comply with the conditions of approval, which are deemed necessary for the
Their screen keeps turning on and off.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The project will change the integrity and character of the zoning. Continue. Oh. Okay. Additionally, the project will not change the integrity and character of the zoning designation, and the applicant will comply with the conditions of approval, which are deemed necessary for safety and welfare. Staff recommends adopting resolution number 25-467, approving conditional use permit number 25-152 with findings and conditions of approval. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions, commissioners?
Nope.
All right, I will now open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? If so, please give your name and address for the record. Anybody online? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. I need a motion to adopt resolution number 25-467, approving the conditional use permit number 25-152 to allow for the construction and operation of a ground-mounted solar array at 3601 East Riverside Street.
I motion to adopt.
I second.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Camacho and a second by Commissioner Pizer to adopt resolution number 25-467. Roll call.
Commissioner Camacho,
Aye.
Sanchez,
Aye.
Pizer,
Aye.
Simmons.
Aye.
and Yoshida.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to our second item. May we have the report, please?
Alrighty. So, this presentation is for tentative tract map 7464. This is the fourth, residential subdivision being proposed in the Mission Lake specific plan area under the ownership of, Milrose property, proposed to be developed by Lennar Homes of California. So tentative map 7464 proposes to subdivide approximately 97 gross acres into 329 total lots. This proposed subdivision will include 324 low-density single-family homes, 2 public parks, 1 drainage basin, and 2 public landscape lots to be dedicated to the city. The proposed residential lots range in size from 4,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet, and the total dedicated parkland will be 24.5 acres. I forgot to update the park acreage here, so that was from a previous tract. It should say 24.5 acres. Just wanted to clarify that discrepancy. The project site is located 3/4 of a mile north of 7 Standard Road, 3.5 miles west of the California 99, and 2 miles east of the Wonderful Logistics Center or Wonderful Industrial Park. It's outlined here on the slide by the red distinct boundaries. So this map is directly north of the last 2 tentative tract maps that were brought before the Planning Commission. Those would be tract 7462 and 7463, both of which received approval from the Shafter City Council. This tract is west of the Marcona Preserve and the Gossamer Grove specific plan areas, where other single-family residential development is ongoing, so the proposal is compatible with surrounding development. The proposed tentative tract map has been designed to be consistent with the standards and the guidelines of the Mission Lake specific plan. The map itself is included as Exhibit A in the resolution with details on the individual residential lots, the internal street network and public improvements, the location of the parks and open spaces, and location of easements and dedications. The 3.5 acre park will be in the center of the neighborhood, and the larger park site will be on the east side of the tract. Under the California Subdivision Map Act, the city must approve the tentative map if all of the required findings on this slide are made. So the proposed tentative map complies with both the Shafter General Plan and the Mission Lake Specific Plan. The proposed subdivision is in substantial conformance with the local subdivision ordinance and the California Subdivision Map Act. The project is proposing residential development in an area where a lot of residential development is already occurring, so the proposed uses and design of the site are compatible with the surrounding area. Conditions of approval have been prepared that are deemed necessary for the safety and welfare of the community and for orderly development of the site. Those conditions are listed in Exhibit B of the resolution. The proposed subdivision consists primarily of residential activity that was accounted for in previous environmental review during the approval of the specific plan. so no further CEQA review is required. At this time, all of the required findings have been satisfied for this tract. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 25-466, recommending that the Shafter City Council approve tentative tract map number 7464 as shown in Exhibit A, subject to the findings and the attached conditions of approval provided in Exhibit B. That concludes this presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Yep.
Smaller park.
Yes, yeah, compared to the previous tract, pretty much, yeah. This is their fourth residential tract, yes. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. This is a completely different tract. It's not a redesign of a previous proposal. This is the first time that the Planning Commission is seeing this tract particularly. So in the Mission Lake specific plan, this is the fourth tract that you're seeing, tentative tract. In total, there's going to be, I think, 1,989 single-family residential lots that Lennar will be developing in the coming years. This map just has 329 of those lots and 24 acres of parkland. But yeah, there's the first time that this map is being brought to the commission. Yeah, 329. So if we go back to the third slide, it shows an overview of the tracks that have come to the commission so far. The one previous, please. Yes. So here on the screen, we've kind of labeled those out. 7461 is the first tract in Mission Lakes, then it's 7462, 7463, which has the water features where the central lakes will be, and then 7464 is the last essentially project that Lennar owns out there in Mission Lakes. There's other portions of the specific plan that can be developed, but they're under ownership by different groups. Yeah. Yes, it is. That is correct. Yeah, just vacant land. Oh. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
That's right.
Any other questions, commissioners? All right, I'll open public hearing on this item. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? If so, please give your name and address for the record. Anybody online? Seeing none, I will now close public hearing. I need a motion to adopt resolution number 25-466.
I motion.
I second.
Our motion by Commissioner Simmons and a second by Commissioner Pizer. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Camacho.
Aye.
Sanchez,
Aye.
Pizer,
Aye.
Simmons,
Aye.
and Shaw.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to our third item. May we have the report, please?
Yes, let's give them a second to put the new one on. We're actually, Honorable Chairman and Commissioners, we're actually going to have two presentations. The first one is a little bit of a primer on what's called the Housing Accountability Act, which is a state law, and how it applies to this item. So with that, we'll go ahead and go into that. So just to give you a little background, the Housing Accountability Act first came into existence in 1982. Prior to that, municipalities had the discretion to disapprove housing even if allowed under existing zoning and following all the rules, essentially our design standards, the zoning ordinance, the California Building Code, the engineering design manual. Those are our design standards or objective standards. And in 1982, it was first enacted in response to municipalities denying housing projects based on subjective criteria. It limited local discretion when housing projects were consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance. Then in the 1990s, additional laws were put in place for the Housing Accountability Act that amended it to provide stronger protections for low income and emergency housing. Then again, another about 20 years passed, and then in 2017, there were a series of Senate bills and Assembly bills where it was again strengthened that required specific written findings when denying projects, establishing a preponderance of evidence standard, meaning you must demonstrate that the claim is more likely true than not true, and introduce penalties and fines for noncompliance with the Housing Accountability Act. Again, in 2019, under Senate Bill 330, there was a prohibition of downzoning or reducing housing capacity for certain zones, and it freezes the objective standards, meaning, you know, what it says in the zoning ordinance, what does it say in your engineering design manual or in the California Building Code. It freezes the objective standards to when the application is submitted so that you couldn't retroactively change the standards halfway through the process. And it also limited the number of local hearings. Prior to that, there were times when people would just sort of keep having hearings to sort of stretch it out over a long period of time. Then in 2021, the courts had a decision that affirmed cities must apply objective standards, height limits, setbacks, things like that are objective rather than subjective standards, such as it's not compatible with the neighborhood character. They had to be objective standards like maximum building height. This is the minimum size of a parcel, etc. And that's all you could base your decisions on for these objective standards. Then in 2023, Assembly Bill 1633 provided a new enforcement mechanism to prevent using CEQA to delay or block projects, generally using CEQA as sort of a weapon against finalizing and approving these projects. And then finally, last year, per Assembly Bill 1893, the state strengthened penalties and clarified that project denials based on subjective objections violates the Housing Accountability Act. So that's just a little background of where the Housing Accountability Act came from. Specific to this project, the Cesar Chavez Foundation has a potential multifamily project that includes low-income housing, and therefore consideration of the Housing Accountability Act is required. The project specifically consists of a request for a general plan amendment and zone change to allow the development of 174 multifamily units at 30%, 40%, 50%, and 60% annual mean income or low-income housing. The project would consist of three-story buildings on an 18.72 acre site, and the buildings would consist of 342,000 square feet and some change. HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development from the state, developed a memorandum that included a decision matrix on whether projects can be denied without violating HAA, and I'm going to show you that decision matrix right now. So this is basically the decision matrix that the Housing and Community Development Department from the state provided to determine whether a housing development could potentially violate the Housing Accountability Act. And based on this decision matrix, staff went through the process of determining whether this project, if denied, would violate the Housing Accountability Act. So I'm going to quickly go through the decision matrix that we did. The first question is, does the project meet the definition of a housing development? And the answer is obviously yes. The second one is, are 20% of the total units affordable to very low or low income housing, or 100% affordable to moderate or middle income housing? Since all of it is low income housing, this is also a yes. Then the next question is, does one of the following apply? And if you say no to all of these, then they all apply. The housing element complies. The housing element complies in the RHNA, which is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. It's basically a number of homes that we need to put into our geography that is based on a Kern-COG estimate. Basically, this RHNA has been met or permitted or exceeded for all income categories for the project? And the answer is currently no. Would the project have specific adverse impacts upon public health or safety, and there is no feasible method to mitigate or avoid an impact? A specific adverse effect means a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified written public health and safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. Staff has determined that that is also no. Another one, does this apply? Would the denial is required to comply with specific state law or federal law, and there is no feasible method to comply? Again, a denial is not required by state law in this case. Let's see here. There it is. Finally, there's a few more questions. This is a continuation of this set of questions. The project is proposed on land zoned for agriculture and there's inadequate water or sewer. Again, no, that the land is currently R1 or single family residential, and there is adequate sewer water capacity to serve the project. And then the next question is the project inconsistent with both zoning and general plan land use designation? And the project is not proposed on a site identified in the housing element, and there are sufficient sites to accommodate the RHNA. So all three have to be answered in the affirmative. The project currently is inconsistent with both the zoning and general plan. Currently, it's zoned for single-family residential. That's why they're doing a general plan amendment zone change to take it to R3 or medium-density residential. But the proposed site is identified in the housing element. It was identified as an R1 site where there was a potential for 30 moderate income housing. That was the assumption. And then the final question is, and there are currently not sufficient sites to accommodate the RHNA for the city. Well, per the housing element, which was recommended for approval by this body and then approved by the council, per the housing element, the city is required to rezone at least 187 acres to minimum density of 20 units per acre, which is what the density for this project is, assuming 25% of the units are lower income to accommodate a shortfall of 935 units to satisfy the city's RHNA for low-income housing. And that is also answered no. We currently do not have enough zoned housing. Therefore, based on this matrix, staff has determined and the city attorney has verified that if we were to deny this project, there would be a risk for a potential Housing Accountability Act violation. By state law, failure to comply exposes the city to potential lawsuits, particularly by the California Attorney General's office, for compliance orders, fines and penalties, and attorney fees. The minimum penalty per dwelling unit, so this is a 174 dwelling unit project, is $10,000 per dwelling unit. Or if we were to deny this and be successfully sued, we could have a penalty of $1.74 million as a result of denying this project. And additionally, even after the penalty has been collected, it could still be sued, and a judge could still require us to build the project. So with that kind of ends my little brief summation of the Housing Accountability Act and its effect specific to this project. And I'd like to go on to the next thing, which is basically the project itself, which is the general plan amendment and zone change. So this is the second presentation. This one is specific to general plan amendment number 23-39 and zone change number 23-72 for the Cesar Chavez multifamily project located at the northeast corner of Birch Street, East Los Angeles Avenue here in the city of Shafter. So as you can see, this is the site. It's located, like I said, in the northeast corner of Birch Street and East Los Angeles Avenue in the southern portion of the core of Shafter. The project is a request to amend the general plan land use designation from low density residential to medium high density residential, to change the zone classification from R1 or single family to R3 or medium high density residential on an 8.72 acre parcel located in the northeast corner of Birch Street and East Los Angeles Avenue. Specific to the project, it will allow for the development of 174 multifamily units or 20 units per acre at 30, 40, 50, and 60% annual mean income. The project is would consist of three-story buildings, totaling about 342,000 square feet. It would be done in 3 phases and include 348 on-site parking spaces and 8 full access driveways. In analyzing the project, we found the proposed general plan amendment and zone change to be compatible with the general plan and the housing element, and that a mitigated negative declaration was found to be the appropriate level of secret review, and mitigation has been imposed to reduce impacts to a level of less than significant. And as I spoke prior in the other presentation, the project cannot be denied without the risk of a Housing Accountability Act violation. Can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. Just want to give you a sense of, this is a preliminary site plan review that was provided by the applicant. And again, this is just preliminary to give a sense of the intensity of the development for the analysis, the CEQA analysis. If this project were to be recommended by your commission and then approved by the council, it would have to go through formal site plan review, where the building department, the engineering department, public works, and planning would all get together and make sure that it meets the objective standards of the city. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This gives you a sense of the elevations of what the buildings would look like when developed on the site. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Staff has reviewed the project and has, beyond the fact that if you were to deny it, it would be a violation of the Housing Accountability Act. Staff also thinks that there are certain benefits to this project. One, it goes towards the housing element requirement of rezoning at least 187 acres to a minimum of 20 units per acre. So if this were to be approved, the 935 dwelling units that we would have to rezone for low income would be reduced then to 761. And what we're trying to do with our general plan update is to figure out areas where we can rezone the rest of the city so that we can meet that additional 161, the need of 161 additional dwelling units. We also think that staff also believes that it provides affordable new opportunities for housing, particularly for the young and the elderly. We have been told a lot of times that right now, people that are just starting out can't afford the single family residential, or there are elderly people who would like to downsize out of their single family and go into a multifamily product. Another benefit, according to staff, is that it furthers several objectives, policies, goals, and programs in the general plan, land use and housing elements, which are further elucidated in your staff report. And multifamily already exists adjacent to the project to the north, and the project would be an extension of this area and not inconsistent with the existing surroundings. Can you go on to the next one, please? So with that, staff recommends that your commission conduct a hearing and adopt Resolution 25465, a resolution recommending to the City Council that they adopt the mitigated negative declaration and approve General Plan Amendment number 23-39 and zone change number 23-72. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and we're open to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
You ready?
I hit my knee.
You ready, Steve?
Yes.
That's a lot, number one. And I appreciate you going through all that. I literally, as you're talking and what I had before, wrote down a lot. I'm having a hard time. A project cannot be denied without risking an HAA violation. So that we're going to risk that no matter what. We're rolling the dice if the project's denied.
Correct.
Okay. And we need 161 additional dwelling units. If this were to be approved, we need 161 more.
We would need 761 more within our city limits. And that's the mechanism we're trying to accomplish that is through the general plan update process where we can designate and zone additional lands within the city. We're currently working on that general plan, and the hope is that we can find additional parcels, or not the hope, the requirement is that by the end of the general plan update process, we will have figured out what additional parcels would be rezoned to at least 20 units per acre to make up this 761 dwelling unit shortfall.
Okay, and we don't know an exact number, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's AMI housing is what you would say?
Yeah,
Okay, we don't know in that area on Los Angeles, how many other complexes are AMI housing? Do we know in that area?
no, we don't. We don't have a map. We can certainly create a map. We talked about this
Yeah.
earlier today, and I just honestly didn't.
No,
have it.
and I'm not,
Yeah.
that's where I'm hung up.
Yeah.
That's where I'm hung up. I mean, I have my.
Well, there certainly is to the north. There's the existing Cesar Chavez Foundation apartment complex. This one would be sort of an extension of that. So that is a low income housing project.
Yeah.
That's existing. And then there is to the west of East on East Los Angeles, there is a self-help tract.
Yeah.
There's also North Shafter, and North Shafter used to be a county area that was annexed into the city. And we're currently doing a lot of work trying to build a park and get the infrastructure up to snuff. So that's another area that would be likely considered low income. And there are also areas on the west side of the core that would be considered probably considered low income housing as well.
So we can say in fairness, we can say everything is on the west side, nothing on the east side of the tracks.
East side of the tracks.
All the AMI housing is on the west side of the tracks. Nothing's on the east side of the tracks. We can make that conclusion, right?
I can't say definitively. I'm thinking that sounds right.
Okay.
Also, just to let you know, there is also areas, again, if you have at least 20 units per acre,
Mhm.
it is basically considered low income housing. There are areas in the Mission Lake specific plan area that are zoned at or that have at least 20 dwelling units per acre.
It's not moderate income housing, or is it low income housing?
The fact that it's 20 dwelling units
Uh-huh.
per acre is considered low income housing.
Okay, 'cause the
Just the density of it itself.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
So talking about the east side of town, there is senior apartments on the east side, and then Wonderful's got their ideas for housing that's gonna include apartments.
If
and
it's approved, that is one of the negotiations that we're doing is with Wonderful. The housing element actually assumed that there would be a certain amount of low income housing that would be developed on Wonderful's parcels of land that are north of Lerdo Highway, east of the core.
And we can't just roll the dice till 2027. I mean, we're stuck. That's how I think, a lot of us up here are feeling right now. We don't have an option.
Oh, in a way, yeah. I mean, it's the state law has kind of tied our hands. What I can say is different is that this is an applicant that came in with a project, and staff is compelled when an application is submitted. We are compelled to process it. So we went through everything to process it, and in that process, my question was, what would happen because it's low income if it were denied? And that's when I sort of started to research the Housing Accountability Act, and I went to the city attorney's office and said, hey, what would be the ramifications if they were to deny this project? And that's when we went down this rabbit hole with the Housing Accountability Act. Roll the dice in the sense of,
We're already saying, we're stating we're going to be, we're at risk to have a lawsuit through the city, right? We're at risk.
yes,
So we're making the decision off of being at risk. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
And
yeah.
and you're saying, and staff is saying that our hands are tied. We really don't have an option.
I mean, what?
But we have till 2027, correct?
Well, we have until 2027 to rezone, but right now we have an active application.
Yeah, we have a good opportunity sitting in front of us.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand that, but we also have time, right?
We have time to
Figure
try to
something
find the shortfall
Yeah.
of 761 additional
Yeah.
dwelling units, yes, through the geography of the city.
Okay.
What prevents a developer from targeting areas like this? Like he just finds a few acres and goes after zoning change?
Well, the thing that's unique about this one is that they have explicitly said it's going to be low income. Someone else could come in with an R1 to R3 request. But let's say they said we're going to do it at market rate or above moderate housing. The Housing Accountability Act wouldn't apply because it's specific. It gives special protections to developers that want to develop low income housing. And it was in reaction to essentially no low income housing ever being developed because people would simply deny it. So the state started developing laws over a 30-year period to sort of provide extra protections to low income housing. But let's say this was R1 to R3, but not low income. The Housing Accountability Act would not apply.
Understood.
What happens if we don't get an additional 700 units? Do we get sued or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to work really hard in finding, by hook or by crook. I have to cajole, finagle, woo some property owners to upzone their land. Or we could have our housing element be decertified by the city or by the state rather. And then there's a whole myriad of ramifications to that. One, you could lose grant funding, the potential for state grant funding. It could invoke what's called the builder's remedy. And the builder's remedy basically is if you don't have a compliant housing element, people have a lot more latitude to basically bypass local land use control and just build what they want to build regardless of the zone. So there are ramifications if you get your housing element decertified. So I am working very hard right now with that general plan update to get those zones in our geography so we do not get a decertified housing element. And that was our mechanism before this project came in. That was our mechanism to do, a whole 975 dwelling units. But now this has come in the door by an applicant. It's not like the city, asked the Cesar Chavez Foundation to apply. They applied on their own and we were compelled to process.
But by all means, Steve, we don't want to make your job harder. My concern is consolidating everything into one location. And I think that's my concern. But I do like the fact, and I forget how you stated it, that once it goes through planning, I don't like the way it looks right now.
Okay.
A 3-story situation. I mean, I do like the fact that we, and I hope that, when it goes through planning, we can change the design and change how it's gonna.
Well, yeah,
How-
one thing I will say is, again, objective standards, right?
Yeah.
In the zoning ordinance, in the R1, R2, and R3 zone, those are the 3 residential zones the city currently has. The maximum height is 35 feet.
Yeah.
For every zone. So if they are under 35 feet,
Then we have no.
we have no discretion.
Yeah.
And so generally a rule of thumb is about 11 feet per story, particularly if you don't have a pitched roof like a single family residential, you have more of a flat roof kind of a setup with,
Yeah.
which is usually apartment buildings. If they're under 35 feet, we have really no discretion. They've met the objective standard. And that's an established objective standard that's been around, since I've been here, and it's probably been around 15, 20 years prior to me coming here.
I think my biggest drawback is for the people that live around there, the new housing development by Balfon's Homes. I don't think those people expected something like that to be right next to them. Mr. Lovelace in the audience, I'm sure he didn't expect that to happen. So I feel for them. At the same time, I understand if a lawsuit happens that everyone in the city is gonna probably have to pay towards that in one way or the other. But I also understand the need of housing and apartments for young people, elderly. The general plan is focusing on finding those areas. But with people that are buying homes over there, were they aware? This is now after the fact that their homes were built. Yeah, this didn't come,
Yeah.
this wasn't in the works before.
No, yeah. The tract was built. This application has been in since 2023, but they didn't provide all the information to deem the application complete until about 4 months ago. And once the application is deemed complete, it gets noticed and it gets brought through the process, the planning commission and the council. One of the things we did notice is when we were noticing for this public hearing, the city clerk's office, the eagle-eyed city clerk's office realized, hey, the tract adjacent to this project is so new, the Ball Fans tract is so new, it's not actually even in the county records yet. That's usually how we pull our mailing lists. We essentially create what is the project site, and then we do a buffer. In this case, I did 1,000-foot buffer. We're only required to do a 300-foot buffer. I did 1,000-foot buffer, but they realized, wait a second, we're not capturing any of the Ball Fans tract because it was so new that it wasn't in the system yet. It wasn't in our GIS system yet to be able to grab. So what we did is I said, look, just say resident and send it to every single, because we do have the track maps with the addressing. So I said, send it to every single house, whether it's been built or not. We don't know if it's been sold or not. So we sent one to every single building or every single residence in the Ball Fans tract to make sure that they knew about this public hearing. And on top of that, if it were to be recommended for approval tonight, we would do the same thing for the city council.
And we only received one written declaration.
We received one written comment from Mr. Lovelace to the west. He's the property owner to the west of the project site.
What are the Ball Fans? So I get confused. So it's the 20, what are the Ball Fans track? What's that considered?
It's the tract of homes.
No, I
directly-
know where it's at, but I'm saying, what's that considered? Is that moderate income? What is that? considered?
That's market rate.
That's market rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, generally our single family residentials are
A
market
market rate,
Yeah.
all of them. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And there's still gonna be a requirement for the police department in Shafter to conduct a safety.
Right, but what we're gonna do, well, as part of our site plan review, where you comply with the California Building Code, the Engineering Design Manual, the zoning ordinance, we're also going to involve the police to make sure that defensible space design is incorporated. Essentially, is it well lit? Are there no dead end corners? Does it have proper security, fencing, gates, et cetera, to make sure that it is as safe a space as possible?
Commissioners.
Thank you, Steve. It's very comprehensive. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
welcome. More
thank
than
you,
happy to
staff.
do it. More than happy to do it, guys.
All right, I'll open, public comment.
Actually, open the public hearing.
Public hearing. Anyone wishes to speak on this item? If so, please give your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Pedro. I live at 709 Dana Street, Pedro Lopez. I'm currently a resident of Shafter. I live in the Balfonz community. That's how I was notified about this by the letter. So the concerns that I would have as a citizen of Shafter is nowhere in the HAA is the community input, is that at all considered when you approve these things?
Well, we consider your community input now is being considered as part of the discretionary action of this body.
But then it opens up, like you said, a violation if you deny it, but nowhere in there does it have for community input to say, maybe the community doesn't like it. If you've already received comments from one neighbor, I can guarantee you that what it is that Shafter has very little cooperation within the neighborhoods because a lot of people don't understand how these things work. But if what the body needs is me to go to door to sign a petition with all residents of Mills Ranch, they do not want this, I can bring that forward to the committee. So I don't think that, for me at least, to come here and essentially, if the project was in the works since 23, I get a letter 3 weeks ago saying, hey, you have to, here's the hearing, show up to the hearing, and well, if you deny it, you're gonna get in trouble. So I don't agree with that at all. And I'm a resident, and I did, to answer your question, Mr. Commissioner Sanchez, I did not know there was building this within the community. I would have never bought a house here, to be honest with you, and I don't think anybody in that community would have. So I have certain concerns. The other concern is it's low residential density, going to medium to high. Shafter is not a medium to high density town as of yet. And to bring in, remind me again, 3,000 more residents essentially? Or 700 dwelling units, correct?
The shortfall currently is 935
And this
dwelling
would,
units.
this would,
Bring it, we would create 174 dwelling units. The net shortfall would be 761.
so essentially to me, if I'm just using just general numbers, I would assume 2 to 3 people living in each one of these units. That's an additional close to 500 people coming into Shafter. We don't even have the capabilities right now. There's traffic jams even now with the amount of people we have now. So to me, to add this amount of people almost overnight, even if it's phased, is a huge burden on Shafter and the local residents, which I think more of them should have shown up, but they didn't. So to me, I'm opposed to that, where we're not a medium to high density town. And I think there's a lot more room for expansion. I'm not anti-progressive by any means. I'd like the stuff Shafter is doing, the area that we're pushing out to, these other developments that are very beautiful, pushing out the area. But I don't know why this had to come down to this specific area, or if there's more areas that this project can be pushed to, that would allow to still satisfy the state and still allow the concerned citizens of the area to say, you know what, I don't really agree with that. And then my last point to it would be really just into the whole, if what the body needs to deny the project and to go back and say, well, if the state says, well, why did you deny it? Well, we have citizens that don't like the project. I'm sure there's something in there, and I'm sorry, I didn't really study up on the HAA, that says, I understand if the city were to make some change and trying to bully a developer, like, hey, we don't want you in this area. We get it. We understand that. But if your not the entire population, if the immediate vicinity is not in agreement with the project, I'm sure there's something in there that states you can't just bully the residents of your current town and say, too bad, we have to put this here. I don't agree with that at all. So I would just ask for this project to be denied, just on the simple basis of if it has to happen, it has to happen. We need more houses. We understand that. But maybe some more time to understand where the best place for this would be. Maybe some more planning, maybe some more conversations about it. And if they want to go back, you can tell them that a resident of Shafter disagreed with it. And I would hope that the city of Shafter would have that residence back, because we are current residents of Shafter, not future residents of Shafter. That's it.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the public?
My name is Eduardo Rodriguez. I live at 710 Dana Street. I'm also there at the Balfons track. One of the biggest concerns that I have is the saturation of the low income in that area. There's already the Hudson Apartments, which are low income. There's also the Amelia Cadena apartments that are low income. And those aren't very well upkept. There's overgrown grass that is a threat to, starting a fire. There's broken down cars, so this is the face that we're making our community. This is what we're gonna do. I can understand that there is a need for low-income housing. However, my parents built a low-income house with the self-help homes back in 2006, and they're proud owners. And I feel like the city of Shafter, exemplifies ownership. We take pride in our town, and who's gonna move in? If we already have other sections of the community that are low income, who are we bringing in? Who else are we bringing in? You're talking about young people, most of them don't want to live in apartments. I'm a young person. I don't want to live in an apartment, low income. I strive to do better, to get out of that, to give my kids, you know, a home with a backyard and stuff like that. Also, the schooling. If that's bringing in 500-600 more people with kids, the schools are already pretty full. What's going to happen when we add more kids to that? Are we building another school? The junior high is at Richland is over capacity. That's a concern as well. There's all these developments happening out there in Gossamer Grove, but I don't see any low income. So you're telling me that this is the only area right now available for rezoning? I oppose it because, you know, when we bought this house, we weren't aware of it. Like Peter said, if I would have known there was gonna be a low-income apartment complex built there, I would have thought twice about buying. Now that it is built, what happens when you move in those kinds of buildings? The property value goes down. And I'm gonna be affected by that. So it's gonna entice me to sell and go somewhere else. And I don't think the city would want that for most of its residents. So I am not for this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Staff, have we known how long the Cesar Chavez Foundation has owned that property? Did we know, like, has it been 10 years, 2 years?
Yeah, I believe they've owned both parcels. The one that was developed, 20 years ago, I believe.
Then they've owned it.
Yeah, they've owned this property for quite a while.
Okay. 2003. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else in the public wishing to speak? Okay.
Stephen, can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Stephen Hernandez. I am the Business Development Director for the Cesar Chavez Foundation. And it's great to hear your comments and your concerns. But I just kind of want to just set the basis of like who we're kind of talking about when we say they or them and overall, just so because a lot of times the people who are going to be living in these developments are already residents of of the community right now. So, for instance, for a family of four, the for 100%, the median income for them will be $93,000 per year. If you So people who are going to be living in our development have to work, and they have to make between $56,000 and $56,000 and $28,000, and that's your 60 and 30% AMI. And that's kind of that's that population range where a lot of the from the last census, most of the people in Shafter are around like that 51% AMI targeting range overall as the overall population. And in terms of the rents, for the 100%, like for a 2-bedroom, the market says right now the rents for just a regular unit as 100% they'll be paying 2,114. So for a 60% unit, the residents will have to pay 1,269, and at 60% and at 30%, it'll be 634. So overall, like we'll be, our tenants do have to work, and just so you know, like the 174 units, we still need to get funding for it. So we're going to do it in phases, so there is not like you mentioned, oversaturation all at one time. Here's 174 units coming in because it takes a while to get our funding in place. But we're going to do like in the separate phases. That's why you see like the the buildings kind of mirroring each other and having that open space there for the development. And also during during when we do the formal submittal for our project, we will have some formal community meetings and charrettes to hear comments on what what they kind of what feedback you do have for development, on the sense that we have to do development of doing low income housing to help out this community. And if you have any questions, I'm here and open to any questions you may have.
Stephen, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Stephen, thank you. My question for you, is this generally, just me trying to gain knowledge here, is this generally funded by grant, private money, state of California? How are these housings how is this generally funded?
It's extremely hard. First, it goes if the city has dollars, then we have ask the city, and then we'll also ask the county if they have funding. We'll ask the housing authority if they have any vouchers, and then we'll go to the state, and state has if they have funding, and then after that, if we get all those funders, so that's about 5 layers of funding, then we'll go to the tax credit agency. So it's the low income housing tax credit monitored by the treasurer's office that manages the program, and that's the final stages where we'll get a tax credit award. And that's why it's so hard to build these developments. So you're looking at, for timing's sakes, we won't, if all the stars line up, we'll probably start building in, I'm gonna say 3 years. And that's a fast track because we need to get funding and all that stuff. So it's gonna be, because there's not, because we're competing against the whole state. Because Shafter is considered a rural, so we'll be competing against all the rural communities throughout California for this limited pool of tax credits. And that's why these projects take so long.
So there's no private money. It's all government funded then.
Well, we do have we do have some debt, but because the rents are so low, the debt, which is the perm loan, is not going to be a lot. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Hey, Stephen, there's residents that will be living in these homes or apartments. Will they be paying rent 100% out of their pocket, or the state will be providing some type of assistance with rent?
No, most of them pay rent out of their pocket because we have to certify them every year that they're working, or unless they have a housing voucher, then the housing voucher will help them. But the majority of them have to work because we have to certify that they work, so they qualify for because we have to certify that their incomes are between 30 to 60%, and so every year we need to certify them and their families. So we also check because I know some other apartments, like the market rate apartments, have I always say, like, my Theo Joe always comes over, and he's gonna end up starting living on the couch. We can't have that. If you have a family of 4, that's all who could live in that apartment, and we have to check on that and do daily checks on that and certify that only a family of 4 is living in this apartment. We don't have Theo Joe coming over or other family members living there that are they're not supposed to be living there. So we have that as a check because we could lose their whole tax credits if we're in violation of that type of arrangement.
So you're saying they're audited every year then? You're auditing this they're doing their checks every year to see their income, who's living in the homes. That's how often they're audited, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you give us an example of around the area in Kern County per se of one of your guys's dwellings or units or complexes? Give us an example of one so maybe we have driven by or we know and we could see where they're at. I mean, can you give us an example of one in Kern County?
Yes, there's one right across the street. There's one, but that was one of our first ones, our older ones. But we have one kind of similar. It's in the east side of Bakersfield on California Street, I think, and Potomac.
Okay.
California Potomac, I believe it's you have a Casa Zadania, and then that's a senior development. And then you have I forget the Solis Terrace is right next door, so they're right adjacent to each other. And then that vacant land, we own that land, and we're going to try to develop that one as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Stephen, the
My
one
pleasure.
you currently have in Shafter right now, how many I don't know if you might know this number on the top of your head. How many of them are Shafter residents and out-of-town residents? Would you have?
I don't, I could get that, go back and get that information for you.
Your applicants already in Shafter, or are they moved out of, I mean, they're coming from a different town to stay here?
I'm not sure I could get back to you on that number, but what we try to do, because we get that comment a lot of on our projects is we do strategic marketing where we advertise first, like only around Shafter, like in the daily bulletin, or like put it like signs around the community itself by the schools. And so you're marketing to them, and then we have the call-in number go to the city first. So all the city, they're gonna be calling the city, and then the city will give us the list of applicants that want to apply. So the majority, if I was a betting man, you're gonna get a higher proportion of Shafter residents who are already living there but just don't know about the program that they're gonna get marketed to first. And we could do that for the first couple months, and then if we don't have enough numbers, because we usually get about 2,000 or 3,000 people just applying for like 60 units or 40 units or 80 units that we have. So it's very high in need, but I get trying to be strategic but not violating fair housing. So that's kind of how we to be strategic in doing that, to encourage more Shafter residents to apply.
I know we're getting a little in the weeds here, but when you're talking about a list, is the housing authority with the county involved in this complex with the Section 8 housing list, or? where's
No,
your-
they're not involved in this one, in this development.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So what happens if you're unable to secure the funding for this project? What will occur to this land, in that instance?
It would just sit vacant. Right now, we've even having it on the market right now for sale. So we're just rezoning it just to see, to get the higher density to help, the RENA numbers, but also to give us the ability if funding does change or the market changes that we could apply. But, it'll just sit vacant until we could get the opportunity to get funding or stack the funding together. But right now, the project it's listed for sale, currently.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Steve, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Now, are they married to building this to live and to be those 3-story complex, or are they still open to suggestions where they can still create something like that Casa Emilia, where they can still help the community, but still keep our residents happy? As you heard, I don't know if you were here earlier, we have a couple of residents that are not too fond about this because they just don't know what's going to bring into the community and where they just bought their homes. Is that something that they're still up in the air, or it's just we're kind of playing it by ear right now, see what the zoning happens?
Yeah, no, we're just playing by ear, but because when we do have the formal hearing, the city requires us to have community meetings, or did you reach out to anyone to have some? I don't know cities like that, so that we do like a charrette and get their design, inputs into the project, and then we could, because we kind of just stacked it like just a big L, like an L shape, just to kind of, because it's a lot of space, but we could go down to 2 stories. It's not like we're not set in that design by any way. We could, it's always open to suggestions and modifications.
The only reason I ask is because I worked at those apartment complexes before, the ones off of California, and I see the ones here. I also work the ones here out off of Casa Emilia, and there's a big difference between the people that are there and over here. And we, like I said, we just want to make sure that our residents are happy what's getting brought into their community, especially with that tract home that they just created out there. Now you got all these residents that bought that and weren't expecting this.
Roger, yes,
That's
sir.
the only reason I'm asking.
No, and I think we could do something where we lighten it on, like on their frontage and go. There's different ways we could design it, because it is 8 acres, almost 9 acres, so we have a lot of like land to kind of play with overall, and do different phases and stuff like that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any questions, commissioners? All right, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I got another question, Steve, before we go on. If this, yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Different, Steve.
Oh.
So my issue now is how serious is this project if the land's for sale? My own thinking is rezone it for different zoning to get more money if you sell it. I mean, you can obviously make more money with apartment housing than you could building a few houses on 8 acres. So that's another issue that's in the back of my head is how serious of a project is this with no funding? And then we're gonna rezone something that's up in the air. I don't like the idea of rezoning something when the applicant doesn't sound too positive.
Well, the for sale portion of it is new to me. Again, I'm processing an application where this is what they said they were going to do, that it was low income, that it would be deed restricted low income. And based on those assumptions, I provided the staff report and the recommendation. So I just heard that just now as well.
So Steve, potentially, if we were to, Mr. Esselman, if we were to potentially change the, or go forward with it, and they decide they weren't able to fund it, or they sell it under another one, and they decide, hey, we want to roll it back to single family homes, we would have that option. Is that correct?
Well, you can always, you can always rezone it again. You'd have to
Okay.
go through the process again.
Okay.
There's also, but here's the thing. Once you zone to a higher density, there's something called no net loss. You cannot downzone from R3 to R1, which is, 20 units per acre versus 5 units per acre, without finding another area to rezone. So there's again, another state law. I know you guys love that, all state laws I'm telling you about tonight, but there is a no net loss law as well.
Okay. Yeah, because that would be.
And
my
it still doesn't change the fact that I need to find,
You still have quite.
I have to find acreage that I can zone to 20 dwelling units per acre.
Okay.
Steve, so why not come to us once they have funding in their hand, then ask for a zone change? I know that might be working backwards, but.
I mean, they could have done that, but they filed the application. Again, the city, the staff to go, hey, file an application. They came to us, and I am compelled to process.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I will close, public hearing. I need a motion to adopt resolution number 25-465.
So since we've never done this, I motion to not adopt resolution number 25-465. That is being recommended for approval of the general plan amendment number 23-39 and zone change number 23-72.
I second.
Steve, this is Henry from the city attorney's office.
Is it?
Yes, Henry.
I'm just trying to understand what the motion was. Was the motion to not adopt the resolution?
Correct.
So then, since the staff has already made specific findings that it does meet HAA, you need to provide staff with findings why it doesn't meet HAA. So if you see on the staff report on page 7, staff has already made those findings. So you need to let staff know what findings are not being met by this project.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry, what, I'm city attorney, what's your first name?
Henry.
So we need to,
You have to find an exception in one of theirs. In other words, what they're saying is that we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner.
So why are we here? I mean,
Just-
let's just be blunt,
Just,
right?
just to be official.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, so you want us to show findings how it does not meet HAA, and that's the only way we can make that decision.
Correct, because if you're just voting no to vote no, then you're opening up the city to liability.
Well.
I feel like we might need an extension on this, Steve.
This is.
Yeah, and then I need to also remind you that if you are continuing this to another meeting, that's gonna be 2 meetings. So then you're only giving the council 3 meetings. So if you don't adopt within 5 meetings, then you're also opening up the city to liability, or you're forcing HAA to just come in and compel the city to adopt.
We're forcing, or the state of California is.
Well, no, the state of California is forcing. And I want to make sure that you know that this isn't something that's unique to Shafter. This is what's happening all throughout the state.
I
It's
fully understand. I mean, we've all stated that we need the dwellings. We've all stated that we understand for the low income. That's not the case here. You know, I think everybody's frustrated with consolidating all the low income into one location. I think I think everybody's stated their piece, but what the point is, Henry, is there's no reason for us to be here. I mean, so we will allow the staff 3 meetings to just, for what reason? It's so that it can be, so we allow the council 3 meetings so it could be approved. Our job scope is planning. Last time I checked, I don't know. Is that our job scope? Yeah, I think our job scope is planning, and I think it would be poor planning, but we have no say. So, you know, that's my piece.
So how do we move on from here?
So Henry, since you're telling us how to move on, since we're being forced how to move on, how do we move on from here?
so the options you have tonight is one, which I think that it seems like you guys don't want to do, is to adopt. The other one is to provide staff with findings tonight of why it's not meeting the findings that staff already said it's meeting. The other option is to continue it to the next planning commission meeting, and then at that meeting provide staff with findings of why it's not meeting.
So Steve, you've had this on your desk to find your findings for how long?
About 2 months.
2 months. We've had 5 days, right? That makes perfect sense, Henry. Perfect sense. So you're asking us to find findings of why it doesn't meet HAA. We all agree that it's meeting HAA. We just don't agree with where it's being located. And we're trying, as our hired position, we're trying to be cognizant of what the community wants. I don't even know why I'm having this conversation. So, all right.
I believe we might need more input from the surrounding residents.
Can we, so we can do
I,
it?
I don't think it really matters, because if they've already done their report and he's already done his report, they've already deep dived it. I don't really think that we're gonna be able to find anything that will be the exception. We can have 1,000 people come in, we can have all the population of Shafter come in and say we don't want it. But again, they're gonna face a $1.7 million lawsuit. And for me, that's the bigger loss. I mean, unfortunately, it's like I said, we've kind of painted ourselves in a corner.
We're taking the risk. Nice, man.
Or choose to move it to a different location.
Yeah, choose to enforce.
Well, but also remember, it goes to the city council, and they can make that decision too. We could say, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what we want to do. We give them all them information, and they can make that decision as well. It doesn't have to be all on us. Well, yeah, true that.
Us sitting here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the people sitting here is pointless. So how do we, I recommend to, hey, Henry, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
I recommend to ask for an extension, and
Yeah.
give the council 1 meeting. It doesn't bother me. due to the fact that we all know what's going to happen. So unless our community members find a way that, and community members and commissioners find a way that it is not meeting HAA. So I guess we're gonna have to do some homework, but we'd like 2 months.
Yeah, that's fine. So you could just continue. So since it is a public hearing, it's a public hearing, staff would just need to renotice it, since I think you're continuing it to a date that's not certain. So then you'll have to just make a motion to continue it, and then staff would just renotice everything again.
Thank you, Henry. I appreciate that. I motion to renotice.
You can just motion to continue the hearing.
I motion to continue the hearing.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Camacho?
Aye.
Sanchez?
Aye.
Isaac?
Aye.
Simmons?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to commissioner reports. Do we got any reports, commissioners? All right, there being no further business to come before the planning commission, I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned at 7:17 PM.